I think we're live everywhere. Y'all know what time it is. About to do another coding challenge live. Waiting on everywhere to connect. Been a little minute since I did a coding challenge, so I'm gonna start back with an easy one called Find Pivot Index. But I'm back. We're about to try to jump into one of these. Join in. Try to help. Join in. Comment. Say whatever you want to say. But you're gonna watch me do this and explain. And it should be pretty cool. Hopefully it goes well. Appreciate you joining if you have. About to do this coding challenge. First, find pivot index is what it's called. It's an easy one. And I know a lot of people were saying the last couple videos, like, do a hard problem. But those hard problems take a long time to do in a real interview. So especially on a stream where I'm trying to over explain things and teach myself and teach other people. But I will be doing those. I have done some mediums in the past and I have done some hards in the past on my channels or whatever. So, but tonight is gonna be an easy one. Hopefully, we're gonna run through this one, but we'll see. So we'll see how it goes. So without further ado, this problem is called Find Pivot Index from KG.codes. Supposedly asked by Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. And the problem goes as such. Given an array of integers, nums, calculate the pivot index of this array. The pivot index is the index where the sum of all the numbers strictly to the left of the index is equal to the sum of all the numbers strictly to the index's right. So basically on both sides of the index, all the numbers should add together to the same value on both sides. If the index is on the left edge of the array, then the left sum is 0 because there are no elements to the left. This also applies to the right edge of the array. Return the leftmost pivot index. If no such index exists, return -1. So that's how the problem goes. And yeah, hopefully we can jump into this and get it done. Example 1 has a list of 1, 7, 3, just has a list of nums here. The output is index 3. So they're saying the pivot index is 3 because, and 0, 1, 2, 3. So they're saying that the pivot is 6. So 1 plus 7 plus 3 equals 11, and 5 plus 6 equals 11. So on both sides of the pivot index, you have 11 total value of the nums added together. And then the same thing here, well, not the same thing here. There's no pivot index because there's no index where both sides are equal to each other. So you return -1 in that case. And then here, 3, the pivot index is 0 because you have 0 on this side and then 0 on the other side. So the pivot index is 0. No numbers. You have left sum 0 and then the right sum is 1 plus -1 equals 0. So you have nothing on this side, but you have 2 things on this side. So that equals 0. So also some constraints. In the interview, it's probably important to note what your constraints are, of course. And here we're going to do the same thing. So they're basically saying the length of nums, so how many numbers they're giving you in this first array, or in this input array, is going to be great. You're always going to have 1 at least, so that's good to know. And you're always going to have less than 10 to the 4th power, which is probably a way to constrain like the memory, the amount of data you have to keep in memory for this. But I'm sure LeetCode probably does have a test case with this much in it, so your algorithm better, got to be good enough to handle it or to timeout. So anyway, then the value of num won't go less than 1,000 or go greater than 1,000. I'm not sure if that'll affect my problem too much, but it's still good to know that I'm working in the confines of like some normal input values that aren't gonna like overload, memory or something in some sort of weird way because it's like some number that's out of range of an integer or some crazy like that. So anyway, yeah, let's try to jump into this. So if you ever watched me do these videos before, you know that how I like to solve these is think about the solution in my head, or maybe write it down. I don't write it down because I'm on video, but think of the solution in my head. How would I solve it in my head? And then take that and all of the programming concepts, data structures, and algorithms and techniques I know and apply that thought that I had how to solve it to code after that. So in an interview, you would want to explain yourself first, your approach, see if it's cool with the interviewer. They may give you a hint one way or the other, or maybe they don't, but it helps to do that because they might give you a hint or it might at least let you know you're on the right track. And then you take it to code after you kind of explain what you're going to do. So when I'm looking at this problem, I know that I'm just look at example 1 and try to think through it. They said the answer is 0, 1, 2, 3. So they say the index, the pivot index is 3. So that means the value of the pivot is 6. And so you know that these added together equal 11. These added together equals 11 too. So that's how you get this 6. But how do you get there? So the trick for this one is, I mean, you can kind of tell that there needs to be some sort of calculation done at every step. So I guess the first thing I would think in the start of my thinking would be I would loop through each of these to test if it's the pivot. So I would like go to 1, look at what's on my left is 0, and then add together all these numbers and get, whatever that number is, and see if my right sum is greater than or equal to or greater than, less than, or equal to my left hand sum, or right hand sum, left hand sum. Yeah. If they're equal, then I return whatever index of this pivot. If I loop through and get all the way to the 6 and I never find an equal left side and right side, then I just return -1. But that would be pretty expensive if I went through every single one of these and then had to loop through all the rest of the values every time. So if I got to 1, I have to go loop through the rest of these and add them together and check against some sum I saved here. And if I go to here, or let's say I'm on 3, I need to go back and add these together, then add these together, then I go to 6, I go back and add these together. Like I would keep just repeating the same operation. So a better way to think about it, and this is sort of a trick, I mean, it's intuition. Some people say it's intuition. You will figure this out. To me, this is just something I just learned from doing the problem before. I'm not a big fan of like people doing data structures and algorithms just thinking that some magical solution would just come to your head. You got to practice these things. You got to learn the techniques that you would use. But the technique here is basically like pre-compute or pre-calculation that you could do, and a formula or like an algorithm basically that you would know based on how this problem is set up. And so what that algorithm is that the right side, so let's say we're at 3. The right side of this, the formula for it is always the total amount of the whole thing minus the value you're on minus the sum of the left side. So as you loop through this, what you could do is keep track of the sum of the left side at all times. So when you're at 1, the left sum is 0. When you're at 7, the left sum is 1. When you're at 3, the left sum is 8. And so to calculate what the right side is, since you're this far, you know that this value equals to the total of all these numbers minus the number you're on minus the current left sum. And then once you calculate this side, then you can say, is it equal to my left sum? If so, return the index of this pivot I'm at. And if I loop through all these numbers with no pivot, then I'm going to go ahead and return -1. And so it's basically a formula. I'm going to write all this down once I do the problem so you can kind of see what the exact formula is. But bear with me, we're going to get through it. So hopefully that makes sense to y'all. What website this is KG.codes, and I'm about to jump into the problem very shortly here. So yeah, that's how I'm thinking I'm going to do it. Let's try to jump into code. For people that just joining, appreciate you joining. I'm going to put the problem. I already typed it in up here. So people that's just joining, they can see what the problem is. Calculate the pivot index of this array. And I didn't put the whole problem. I'm say if no pivot, return -1. So people don't come at me like, hey man, what if there's no pivot? All that stuff. So anyway, so what I say I was going to do in my, thought process of how I was going to do this. So, oh shoot, the one thing I didn't say is that, you remember I said the formula is total amount of the whole thing minus the current value I'm on minus the left sum. Well, how do I get the total amount of everything? Well, I need to pre-compute it. So I basically need to do some work to add all these numbers together to get my total value that I can use in my right sum formula. This is going to make more sense when I jump into this. And I'm sure this is easy for some, and I'm sure it's not easy for others. Can you use C++? Next time maybe I use C++. I'm going to use JavaScript this time. JavaScript is what I've been using to interview with over the past, I don't know how many years. So C++, I haven't used that since college, man. But I love C++. It was like my first language. No disrespect to it or nothing. I love it. But I gotta use what I know, or I'm gonna get stuck on something for sure. But anyway, so here's the problem. Basically, KG.codes is what I'm using here. It stubs out the function for you. Gives you the input nums. So what nums is this thing. And so we know that that's a list of numbers that are coming in. And it's basically saying you need to return a number, which is the pivot index. If there's no pivot index, return -1. If there is a pivot index, return what that index is. So what is the first thing I said I was going to do? Pre-compute the total of the whole nums. So how do you do that? You can just simply... And let me make sure I'm doing this right. You can simply loop through the... Why am I doing that? Loop through the nums and add them together. So you can... I is less than nums dot length. I plus plus. This is just a loop. And I can't type while people are watching. It always happens. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And do I need to put any... Yeah, I need to put... let total sum equal to 0 to start with. And then what I'm going to do here is basically total sum plus equals, which will just add my current. So basically what I'm doing, I set a total sum equal to 0 because I want to pre-compute my total sum. Just do a simple loop on nums where I is less than or I is less than the length of nums. So that basically iterates. This I iterator will iterate through our nums array. And then for every num, I just add it to the total sum. So now when I come out of this, I should have a total sum that just adds up all the numbers in my num array. And I'm going to use that later to do the problem basically. And so what's the next thing I said I was going to do? So after I had a total sum, basically what I said is I'm going to check every value, and at each value, I'm going to check if the right side sum is equal to the left side sum. And I'm going to keep a running total of my left count sum as I iterate through the array again. And my right side sum is going to be calculated based off a formula that I'm going to get from using total sum, subtracting the current value I'm iterating on, and subtracting the left sum that I'm keeping a reference to basically. So like I said, I'm going to keep a reference to left sum. So I'm going to create that and say that it's 0. Because remember when we start out, if you start on 1, the left sum on this side is automatically 0. There's nothing over there. So it has to be 0, of course. And then I'm going to just loop through this again. So I'm actually just going to copy this and not waste time writing this over. But I know I need to loop again. I need to loop every single num again. So now what can I do? Like I said, I need to check if the left sum is equal to the right sum, but I need to calculate the right sum using a formula. So I think I can do const because I don't think it's going to change, but it's going to call this right sum. And what did I say right sum was? Right sum is total sum minus the number I'm on. So that's in this loop I'm in, that's the nums at iterator I, at whatever I is, minus the left sum. Left sum. So that gives me my right sum value based off this formula. And this is what I was talking about. This formula here is something that, you know, people will tell you that needs to be like you need to come up with that with intuition. I don't know how you would come up with that with intuition, honestly, but I mean, this is just something that I've done, a problem that I've done before, and that's why I know it. But these type of algorithms like this are things you need to practice and get in your tool belt so that you understand, kind of when you can use this and where and whatever. So once I got this formula, I can get this right sum. And then what did I say that I was going to do in my problem? I said I was going to compare the problem's asking me, like, where's the pivot index? And the pivot index is when the left sum equals the right sum. I properly name my variables, so I know what left sum and right sum is. So let's do our check. Left sum, does left sum equal right sum? If so, it's the pivot index. So return I, because I'm already iterating through. So my index I would be the pivot index if left sum equals right sum. But what if it doesn't equal right sum? So if it doesn't, basically I need to go back in this loop again and iterate and calculate a new right sum and compare it to left sum again. But first I need to update left sum as I iterate with the current I need to add the current value to it, because remember, I'm going to keep a running total of my left sum. So to explain that, as I'm looping through this, when I get to 7, I'm going to add 1 to my left sum, and I'm going to use my formula to calculate my right sum, and then I'm going to compare, does 1 equal 3 plus 6 plus 5 plus 6? Obviously it doesn't, but that's basically what my algorithm is doing. It's basically comparing my right sum to my left sum. It's keeping a running like tally of my left sum, and it's recalculating my right sum on every interval based on the total sum that I pre-calculated earlier. I hope that makes sense. Hope that makes sense. And yeah, sorry I'm not reading comments. Like, it's tough to do this while you're reading comments, and I'm gonna try. I know somebody asked, why am I using JavaScript? It's my most comfortable language for coding interviews. That's why. I know some people were saying that they're learning a lot. I appreciate that. I hope so. I know this is an easy one for some people, but everybody's on different levels. So this might be easy for you, but for somebody that's just starting with these, it's definitely not easy. So, and then somebody said you could do this on ChatGPT. It can, but that doesn't mean that a company gonna let you interview with ChatGPT. So yeah, I could do this at work. I wouldn't be doing these problems at work. These problems are problems that are asked in coding interviews very frequently. So that's why we have to learn these things. People may be cheating with ChatGPT in interviews now. I don't know, because the last time I interviewed, ChatGPT wasn't out, which was like late 2020. So ChatGPT came out like late 2022. And ChatGPT came out in December? I don't know. But whenever it came out, it was like right after I stopped interviewing, the last leg of interviewing I did. So anyway, let me get back to the problem so I don't annoy people away. Where was I? I just looped through this. I basically made this whole algorithm that pre-calculates the total sum. I looped through it again, calculate my right sum using my total sum minus the current number I'm on minus the left sum, which I'm keeping a running tally or total of. And then every time I loop through, if I didn't find my pivot index, then I go ahead and add the current iteration that I'm on to the left sum. And so if I get through this whole loop and I haven't returned a pivot index, then what does it tell me to do? It basically tells me to return -1. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that so I don't forget to do it later. And yeah, this is my whole algorithm. I think this looks good. I think this works. But what in an interview setting, what they're gonna do a lot of times, they won't even let you run the code. Like at least some of the bigger companies I interview for, they may make you do it in a notepad or some IDE that doesn't run, and it will make you trace the code manually. So while you maybe can use ChatGPT, if you don't understand how that code runs and they making you trace through it line by line, they're gonna easily figure out that you don't know what this code does, that you just copied it. And then what are you gonna do? Like copy it over or try to read, keep turning your head reading it? I don't know. You got to figure out a clever way to do it if you're trying to cheat. But like I said, man, I don't know. It's just kind of, I understand that we can use ChatGPT for stuff like this, but it's sad thing. I don't really believe in the coding interviews, but the sad truth is you got to learn them if you want to go for big companies that do these in their interviews. And that's why I do this, to try to help out the community here and help myself. And, I started from nothing. I was terrible at these things. And I practiced and eventually got to the point where I could pass interviews that had these. Not every interview, I ain't gonna lie. Like, I don't pass every interview, nobody does. But I got to the point where I could pass some Fame company interviews, like, Amazon, level companies. So yeah. And anyway, not to brag on it, but just to say that, like, you can come from, like, humble as possible. You can come from nothing, not understanding anything, in a few months and be able to be good at this. So don't be discouraged if you don't understand what's going on. And even if you do understand what's going on, there's always more to learn. So anyway, let me start going back into this because I could just talk all day. So what I usually do is I will basically trace my code manually. So to make sure it works. Some interviews are going to make you do this. Some interviews will have a runner that they will run your code, but sometimes they're going to make you do this. So, and you should be able to do this anyway. Like, even if they're going to run the code, you should be able to manually check your code because you're going to have to check it for bugs. And so how I do this is I usually find every variable in my code, write it up here so I can keep track of all my variables. And then I'm going to trace it through with some sort of input. So I'm going to try to find an easy one from over here that ain't going to take me all night to do, but that gives me a good answer. This one kind of sucks to do because it don't really have no running total. I'm going to do this one. Yeah, I'm going to try to make one up maybe that's better than this one because I don't want to take all night. And this one, yeah, is this. So if I make this one 8 and 3, that'll give me 11. Yeah, 11. Yeah. Okay, so this one should be the pivot. The pivot index here should be 3. Sorry, 0, 1. It should be 2. Sorry. So anyway, let's do this. So what is the first thing in my code that it does? Oh, shoot, I didn't write. Yeah, I wrote down total sum equals 0. So it sets total sum to 0. So I write that up here. And then it loops through every num I have and adds it to the total sum. So here, I equals 0, nums is less than length. So I'm going to go through every single one. I'm going to add 8. Then I'm going to add 3, which is 11. Then I'm going to add 6, which makes it 17. Then I'm going to add 5, which makes it 22. Then I'm going to add 6, which makes it 28. I hope my math is right there. Somebody double check me on the math. But all of these should be 28. 8 plus 3, 11. 11 plus 6, 17. 17 plus 5, 22. And then 22 plus 6, 28. So now, after I run through this code and I've added all these numbers to it, I should have total sum with 28 in it. Left sum equals 0 is my next line, so I'm going to add that there. Now I'm going to do the same type of loop again, but I'm going to start calculating this right sum here. And I'm trying to think, can this be a const? I think it can. Yeah, because I don't think I'm doing anything with it. So what's total sum? So if I start this loop, what's total sum minus the current iteration I'm on minus left sum equal? So let me see. Yeah, so total sum, if I'm on 8 here, if I equals 8, and I might need to like actually put like nums that I'm like the number that I'm actually on down here would help. So just say I'm on 8. So total sum 28 minus 8 minus left sum, which is 0. So 28 minus 8, that gives you the right sum of 20. So right sum is 20. Does left sum equal right sum? Do I have a pivot index here? No, 0, 20. So no, I'm going to skip this return and I'm going to go here and add the number to my left sum. So now left sum will equal 8. And then I'm going to erase this because I'm going to come out of this loop and start it again. And when I iterate the loop, this is going to turn to 3 because I'm in the next spot in my loop. Sorry, next spot in my loop here. And so then I'm going to have total sum 28 minus 3 equals 25 minus 8. So yeah, 28 minus 8 equals 20 minus 3 equals 17. So that would give me a right sum of 17. Does left sum equal right sum? No, it's 8 and 17. So I'm going to add 3 to my left sum. Yeah. So that would give me 11 here. And then this would go back to nothing. And then I would go to my next number, which is 6. And okay, yeah, I think I should get the answer here. Yeah. So, and then we put what I is. So right now I equals 2. 0, 1, 2. So now we're going to come back into here, right sum, total 28 minus 6 equals 22. And then minus 11 equals 11. So my right side is 11. You see something's happening here. Does left sum equal right sum? Yes, it does. It's 11 and 11. So I have a pivot index at this point. That's the problem. Calculate the pivot index. A pivot index is when the right sum on one side of the index equals the left sum on the whole other side of the index. Now I can return I. What was I? I was 2. And so my answer is 2 in this case. The pivot index of this problem is 2. So it looks like my code works. This is something you would, an interviewer would probably ask you to do. Sometimes this is all they would ask you to do this, and then it would be over. It would be it. That would be the it for this problem. Sometimes they would have you run it after this. It depends. And then the other thing somebody brought up in the comments on TikTok is they said that would the interviewer ask you to talk about time and space complexity? Yes, they would. So we need to talk about it. So big O notation, if you're not familiar with it, is something that you should go study if you're interested in doing these type of problems or interviews. And so time complexity for this problem in big O notation. So let's just take a look at it. So what we have input is an array, a simple array of numbers. So it's called that n. It's called the length of our numbers n. How many numbers do we have is n. Big O notation in time complexity is a measure of how well your algorithm scales in reference to your input size. So you may have an algorithm that works well for a small input, but when the input gets big, what is the big O notation is how you specify how your algorithm scales with the size of your input in reference to the size of your input. So you always got to think about the size of your input. So here, size of the input is called an n. That's basically nums.length is n in this case. It's the size of our input. So what are we in time complexity? What operations are we doing? We're looping through n here. So this basically, as it pertains to the size of our input, we're doing n iterations. If n goes up, we do more loops. If n goes down, we do less loops. Why is this not counted in big notation? Because it's a constant. It's counted, but it's usually reduced because it's not tied to the size of our input. If nums was 0, this line would just run one time. If nums was 1 million, this line would still run one time. But these lines would run 1 million times. So now we already know that so far we have what this is called in big O notation would be linear time, or big O of n, because for every n, every number of our input, we do n operations. So if we have 10 numbers, we do 10 operations. So now we get here. This is another constant. This only runs one time no matter what size our input is. So yes, ignore it. Now we get to another loop again. So now we're doing another n times. But the tricky thing that happens here that may trip people up is that we're doing n times here, and then we're doing plus another n times here. So this would be 2n. If you know like algebra, it would be 2n, 2 times n. We basically loop through n once and then we loop through it again. But in big notation, that reduces down to just n, because no matter how big the size of our input, it doesn't scale exponentially. It's just you're just doing it. You're still doing it twice. So whether you do it twice or 3 times or 4 times, it's still big O of n, because you're not exponentially in any way multiplying how many times you do it. You just simply, whether n is 2 million or is 1 million isn't a substantial difference. It sounds like it is, but I promise it isn't. Versus if, let's say we had another loop nested inside of here, then that would be n squared times. So that would be like, if this was 1 million times 1 million, million plus a million is a big difference than a million like times a million. So that's kind of how big O notation works. I know it may be confusing, but go study up on it. I try to explain it the best I can. But for now, I'm going to keep going. So basically and then all this stuff in here, these are constant. These they don't scale based on the size of our input. They all run one time based on the input. They're in a loop, but they all individually run a single time. They're constant operations. So basically, our big O notation for time complexity is big O of n. So it's linear. We run through it one time here. We run through it one time here. That's 2 times n, which basically reduces to big O of n. Now, space complexity is how much we've actually stored compared to the size of our input. Well, basically, we haven't used any, and it matters about what type of data storage you use. Like you need like an object or a map or an array or something, some sort of in-memory state thing that's going to actually increase in memory. The only thing we do is we update this sum, which is going to always replace the sum every time we update. It's going to be one single int in memory at all times, integer in memory. So it just uses constant memory. It doesn't increase in size no matter how much we add to it because, it just doesn't. So, and then here we do the same thing. We're just loading these ints up. We're not like using the only data structure is nums and that's our input. So it doesn't really count. So we aren't really using any space besides for these constant values that we set to integers. So that means our big O notation for space complexity is big O of 1 or constant space or constant time. Well, not time, but constant space. So time complexity, big O of n. Space complexity is big O over 1. And so I know that might have sounded like a lot to some of y'all. And to some of y'all, I was like, that was too easy. But I mean, you got to learn the concepts on the easy stuff so that you can apply it to the harder problems when it turns to medium problems and hard type problems. So, that's how it works. I see some people having some conversations in there. I love when y'all do that. I know I can't answer all the comments. It's really hard to think about this stuff and talk about this stuff and read the comments at the same time. But, I'll try to talk after I get done with the problem. So anyway, I'm almost done, y'all. So I think the next thing I need to do, I'm going to erase all this so I have some more space. But hopefully y'all saw what I did here. I ran the code manually to make sure it worked and kept track of all the variables. Now I'm going to run it on KG.codes. You can hit this run button to run it. So, man, I hope this works. Yes, it works. So for all three what they do is they take these 3 test cases from over here. And they automatically, example 1, 2, and 3, they automatically plug it into this case 1, 2, and 3. So you can see it's the same cases we had over there. This is the case or close to the case I ran earlier. I get the expected output of 3. Same thing with case 2. I get the right output -1. In this one, I get the right output of 0. So that's working. So the moment of truth is when you run it against all LeetCode submissions. And they give you like a score of runtime. They give you like a runtime complexity. They give you space complexity as well. So let's run it and see. Okay, cool. So, wow. So my algorithm beat 97%. It ran in 59 milliseconds. It beat 97.33% of all of the LeetCode submissions. You got to take this with a grain of salt. People I talk to, they don't really believe the LeetCode times, but I'm going to take a win where I can get it. Memory, 44 megabytes, be 88%. I don't know why. This problem is really easy and the answer is really simple. So I don't know how I beat a lot of the other LeetCode submissions. I'm really not sure about this. I don't feel like I did anything revolutionary here, but maybe I did. I think I can make this faster. I think I could spend a couple seconds to make this a little bit faster. Because I think one thing I did here. Now, it's all about readability. Like in a real scenario, I would probably leave this right sum here for readability and people can understand how the code works. But if you're trying to make something run as fast as possible, if you can get rid of variables, then just get rid of them. So I can just get rid of that right sum and just do the calculation in line right here. And I think that'll make it faster. Make sure it still works. Submit it again. That made it slower. That's crazy. Okay, well, Proves me wrong. I thought that'd make it faster. Anybody know why that made it slower? Because I don't know. I honestly don't know. I thought that would make it faster. So I was totally wrong. But you know, one thing I want to check is if I take this back, if LeetCode will still be like, it was super fast. See, now it went down to 70. So yeah, that's why you got to take this. This is the same code I ran earlier. That's why you got to take this with a grain of salt, because it just changes every couple seconds. But then again, this milliseconds could be just arbitrary, like depending on how fast it ran. Yeah. So it just runs different speeds every time. So yeah. So it just ran really fast the first time I ran it for some reason. So that's really all it was. But whatever, I'm happy with it. I know it's probably the most optimal result, or really close. So maybe there's a better way to do this, and you guys know about it. So yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what this conversation with Mittens and T is going on. I'm like, are y'all talking to me? Are y'all talking to each other? But I love the conversation. I love the debates. It's cool. Like, I love it. Y'all keep doing. I appreciate y'all jumping on here and talking about this stuff, getting passionate up in here about all that. So I hope y'all understand. If y'all have any questions, hit me up in Instagram chat. I'm on everything. I'm on Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, all live at the same time. So if you want to catch me on another channel one day, you can. Can you delete the BST and rebalance? I don't know if I can do a delete and rebalance. I mean, I can balance a binary search tree and do like problems in it, but I've never heard the problem delete it and rebalance. I've never heard of that problem actually, but I'm sure I could do it. Not off the spot, but I could do it eventually. Yeah, let's see. What is people talking about in here? Bro, do you record these and update these to YouTube? Yeah, I'm going live on YouTube, and I end up like recording it and just leaving it on YouTube as well. So I got a bunch of stuff on my YouTube, bunch of old problems. Some hard problems, some easy problems, whatever. Right now, I'm done with the problem, everybody. If you're just joining, I'm letting people look at it. I'm trying to answer questions because I couldn't answer questions while I was trying to do the problem. Do a dynamic programming one. One day I will. I did some hard problems before on my channel. If you want to go and look back, whatever you're watching this on, I did a couple mediums, and I think I did one hard one before. But the hard ones, man, they take a long time. And most of the dynamic programming ones are mediums or hard. And if you're in an interview, a lot of the interviews, like I did an Airbnb interview, and they did all hard LeetCode problems. And it has like a slight variation where you couldn't just find them on LeetCode. It takes the whole interview session to do the problem, like straight up. So somebody on YouTube, Strength, dope channel, I just appreciate that, man. I do this for community. I do this to help myself learn. I practice these in front of y'all so that if I get in an interview, like I done practiced it in front of 100 people on TikTok, so I'm straight. As I get an interview in front of one dude that I never see again, I'm straight. Y'all, I gotta see. I might see y'all somewhere. Like I went to Render Conference last week. I started seeing people that saw my videos. I was like, dang. Like, you saw me struggling on this. You saw me doing that. You saw me looking crazy on this. But anyway, that's why I do this. So I appreciate subs and stuff like that. And I'm going to try to get on my game a little bit more and do a lot more than these. Somebody said, the basic lines of thought is to know when to use what control statement structure on Instagram. This is Maraf Soft Solutions. Appreciate that comment. Yeah, you're right. Doing LeetCode problems isn't all about memorization, but there is a lot of memorization. You need to, don't let nobody fool you that you just can just come out of your mind and just know this stuff. You need to practice these problems. You need to learn the foundations, the data structures and algorithms, and then you need to learn problem recognition. So you learn the foundations, you start doing a bunch of problems in each pattern. You learn the patterns basically, and you need to learn how to recognize what technique goes with which pattern of problem. And I use this thing called Algo Monster. That really gave me a boost last year. I started using Algo Monster, and Algo Monster teaches you the foundations first, and then you start saying, oh, okay, I can use a binary search tree here, or I can use breadth first search here, or depth first search here, or okay, I need to use this algorithm here. I need to do adjacency trees here, or I need to use a matrix for this problem, and then like breadth first search the matrix or whatever. You learn these different concepts, and then you can apply them instead of just trying to go on LeetCode first and do 1,000 problems and just sit there and just memorize them. You memorize the patterns. That's what you memorize, and then you can start to apply them to different problems. And so, yeah, you're totally right, man. And somebody on Instagram said, how many times did it ran for that time? I don't get LeetCode. Like, it just running it. Like, now it says 80 seconds. It was running 46 seconds. The same exact code. Y'all saw me run it. It's the same code I ran earlier. It ran in 46 milliseconds. Now it's running in 70. So I think it's like LeetCode processor, their code processor just runs however long it wants to. And now I'm getting only 66%. I got 90% when I first submitted it. So I don't know. But anyway, I appreciate y'all, man. Oh, KG.codes. Yeah. So yeah, after I did Algo Monster, I did KG.codes. KG.codes is like a list, or it's a website and a list. I don't know, but it's a website you can go to, or a list of problems, common problems that you should do that a lot of interviewers ask. So, it's a great resource. I appreciate you mentioning that, Moonless. Appreciate you jumping on here and doing that. Yeah, Salih said memorize the patterns game. Yeah, man, that's the hack. That's what I didn't learn that, man, till a long time. I kept trying to memorize every single LeetCode problem I ran into. Now, if you do enough problems, eventually you start to notice the patterns, but that's just the hard way to do it. Why would you do it that way? Learn the patterns first. And one thing that Algo Monster does is they rank the patterns in order of how much they show in interviews, which is like, that's sick, because they know how many times these problems, like, give you the ROI. Like, you probably should start learning breadth first search before you start learning dynamic programming, because it's more often that it comes up. And man, using that thing helped me so much. The other thing I use, LeetCode.com, buy the pro subscription. And if you're going for FANG interviews or big company interviews, you go into there and you click on the company name and order the problems by, frequency. I did that thing, man, and went into some of those interviews, and them folks was asking almost the same problems from LeetCode's ranking, because LeetCode updates it weekly. So they know, I don't know how the heck they know, but they know the problems that are showing up. Like, I promise you, I'm not going to put out my business out there, but I interviewed for a couple big companies that you use every day. And they problems was on LeetCode Pro. You had to get the Pro version, but it's worth it. So get your resources, man. Learn by patterns. One thing my boy, God dang, I'm forgetting his dang name, man, because he changed his Instagram name. Dang, I'm forgetting his name. I'm embarrassed. But one of my boys on Instagram, and I just know him on Instagram. He's not my real boy, but he said that don't spend more than 15 minutes on a problem. And that junk hit me hard. I was like, because when I first started, I used to sit there on the easy, spend like an hour trying to figure it out. Like, if I don't figure it out, then I'm not going to go look up the answer. Nah, man. Don't spend more than 15 minutes on a problem, because you're not going to get that time in an interview. If you can't figure it out in 15 minutes, just call it a failure, a learning experience. Look up the answer, do the problem, mark it on your list to come back and do that problem later, and see if you can do it in 15 minutes, later. You know what I'm saying? But this is after you've learned your patterns and you learn pattern recognition, because sometimes you need that click, man. Sometimes it's nothing but a click to know that, dang, this solution goes to this problem. It ain't even about so much. Don't let people fool you that you just sitting in the interview and you just so smart and you just figuring things out on the fly. Like, nobody does that. Everybody that does these practices, these interviews, and every time they go to interview, they go back to LeetCode and brush up on their skills. Now, it gets easier because you don't have to brush up as much when you first learn, but everybody's, they still fail too. People still fail interviews even after they've passed a few. So, don't be discouraged. Don't let people discourage. Don't let people looking like they winning all the time discourage you because they're not talking about their losses. But I'm just rambling. But hopefully it's useful and valuable to people. What language is this? JavaScript. I never coded in JavaScript. I prefer Java or Python. I actually never used Python, which is probably crazy to some people, but I know it's great because of the reviews it gets. Java, I use it at work still, and I've used it in the past a lot. Java's a powerful language, strongly typed, object-oriented. I love Java and C#. So Java's a great language to start with, man, if you do, to give you like really deep programming concepts. See what other people have said. Let me catch up on my Instagram. Just in addition, look up LeetCode discussion. Oh, yeah, man. Lino Made Puth. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Appreciate that. use the Leak Code discussion forums, man. They will get you can find the answer. You can find the problems that they're going to ask in interviews there too. Like they like people go in there and say, yeah, this is what I got asked for an SDE one role at Amazon. I use that too. That helped me out, man, for sure. Like 100%. Java is my favorite. Yeah, man, Java's crazy. I love Java. C#, Ray, thank you for mentioning that. C# is like probably my favorite, like strongly type object-oriented language, man. It's just so powerful. It's so rich and like with the, interfaces and you just use a lot of deep programming concepts that kind of just help you grow a lot faster. Then when you move to JavaScript, which is a little bit more free, it's dynamically typed. There's a lot of frameworks. There's a lot of, it's more opinions and stuff like that. It's like a lot to deal with. But C# is like owned by Microsoft, .NET environment. Like it's very opinionated to very opinionated to like, this is what, you should do. So I like it. And Java, of course, because C# is just they tried to one-up Java, basically, Microsoft. How do I get into coding engineering? That's a big question, man. DM me, because that's a tough one. Like, it depends on a lot of different factors, but you can do it. You can get into coding and engineering. Like, it depends on what thing sub-genre or whatever subdomain you want to get into. But, man, you can learn on YouTube. I would say either go to school, do a boot camp, or try to self-teach on YouTube, depending on your learning style. Now, if you know you ain't got no determination, don't try to self-teach. If you know you just quit stuff easily, just don't try to self-teach. Don't even start it. If you know you don't want to pay for a boot camp out of your pocket, don't do a boot camp. If you know them people not going to make you do anything, don't do a boot camp. If you know the only way you can learn the code is if you go to class and some professor's up your butt, then go to college and get a degree. There's nothing wrong with that. So nothing wrong with any of the three options. It depends on your learning style. That's how I would say get into coding. You got to learn how to code. So you got to either self-teach or with your million resources, you can DM me or whatever you want to do. Do you self-teach? When you self-teach, how do you practice? Dang, that's a good question. Dang, yeah. I mean, it depends on what I'm trying to learn. So if I'm trying to learn this stuff, like I mentioned earlier, I like to use Algo Monster. I use Algo Expert before its videos. I like text better. I'm weird, man. Like videos, I have to keep rewinding it and I be missing stuff. I don't really learn from videos. I'll do YouTube videos for some stuff, but like if I'm like basically trying to learn my core stuff, I like to read a book not read a book, but I like to look at a digital book or look at a website where I can scroll back up 1,000 times and like see what the heck's going on. That's just how I learn. So Algo Monster prides itself and they don't do videos. They do text, like documentation based learning. But Algo Expert is highly regarded. If you're a visual learner and like to learn about videos, then go for Algo Expert. As far as coding, like if I'm trying to learn a new programming language or I'm trying to learn a new framework, I like to start with the public documentation. I like to hear from the horse's mouth how they feel about their framework or their language and like how they expect me to use it. And then I'll go find something on YouTube, or then I'll go find some, use pluralsight.com or egghead.io or some other third party to help me augment my learning. But I'm a weirdo, man. I like to look at documentation all the time. Like if I'm trying to learn like how to use the Stripe API to do payments, Stripe's documentation is like top tier, man. It's like one of the best sites. I know that was a tangent. Of your location, you have to be willing to relocate. Oh, it's a boot camp. Oh, dang. They pay you in a boot camp? Ray mentioned this in here. Thank you. Wow. I never heard of a boot camp where they pay you, though. That's crazy. That's interesting, man. People look into that. Raventure, something like that. Yeah, look into that. If they pay you, that's like win-win, man. You know what I mean? Or I guess if they're gonna help you move, or you might have to be willing to relocate for a job placement or something like that. Did you leak code before your interview? Oh, heck yeah. If I knew in the past. So let me give you a story. I've been in the industry 10 years. The first 8 years, I refused to do leak code. I was like, this is stupid. It don't match your day-to-day job. Leak code does not match your day-to-day job. So people that mention that, you're right. But for some reason, Google back in the day, like 2012 or something, started doing these leak code, these data structure algorithms, interviews, and all the rest of the tech industry copied them. Fast forward to today, a lot of big tech companies are using them, but you still can avoid it if you do smaller companies. And you ask the interviewer before you get in there, or you look it up on Blind, or you look it up on Glassdoor, you look it up on LeetCode. See who, probably not LeetCode, but see who does the interviews. There's a GitHub site where you can go and find companies that don't LeetCode. You can avoid LeetCode. Let me put that out there. You can avoid it. You can just study your butt off, get experience, and get jobs without LeetCode ever touching in your career. I know devs that refuse to learn it. They never will, and that is what it is. Me, I wanted to try to take a stab at bigger companies, the Amazons of the world, the Googles, the Microsofts, so that's why I started studying LeetCode so I could do well in their interviews. And so, yeah, I had to learn LeetCode before I went. I knew those interviews did LeetCode, so I had to learn it before I went into those interviews. How long take to get job for self-teach? Boy, like kind of talking like Hulk on that thing. No, that's funny. But no, appreciate that question, Mule. How long it take to get a job or for if you self-teach? That's a good question, man. I mean, it's tougher when it can be tougher when you self-teach. You need to make sure that after you do learn the code, you start working on your portfolio and you actually do meaningful things for your portfolio. What I suggest, instead of doing these random like tutorial projects for your portfolio, do real projects. When you find a problem in your life, like I have this app I made called Snippeta, which is just copies text snippets from my phone really fast. Like I do a lot of social media content. I need my social media links so I can one click them and post them somewhere. I want all my hashtags, post them, click, So I made my own app, put it on the App Store. And when I got to the interviews, when they look at my projects on my resume, they real projects. Like these things that customers, I have clients, freelance clients, or stuff I built for myself. I wanted to be able. I had a guy download my app in the interview. That was the sweetest feeling ever. Because how much more validation you gonna get, like of your little portfolio project, rather than it being downloaded by hundreds of people, millions of people, whatever it is, and then the actual interviewer download and say, oh dang, this is okay. You built this in what? We have a conversation about it. He knows I know my stuff, and it's all good. So that's what I would suggest, especially if you self-teach. Do your tutorial projects to learn, but once you're trying to build your portfolio and your resume, start doing real projects. Ask family and friends, do some freelancing, put the stuff on your resume, have the real links. It goes a long way it's about quality rather than quantity. I've seen people put like 10, 15 things on their GitHub and in their resumes that are like, Twitter clone, or what I'm saying? Something. I mean, those are good things to learn. A calculator app. Yeah, a calculator app is a good thing to use to learn, but I'm telling you, I've interviewed hundreds of people myself. I've had to LeetCode interview people, and I've had to do other types of interviews, regular interviews. When I look at their resume, I'm so busy. When I have an interview come up on my plate, I'm just like, man, I got to do this interview. I'm not about to look at your calculator app. Now, if you got an app on there, you kind of like boost it up like, oh, dang, I put this out, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting. It catches my attention. But like calculator app is like 1 in a million, you know what I mean? But there's nothing wrong with doing those to learn, for sure. Somebody said, how do you do hard questions? PLA. I don't know what that means, but how do you do hard questions? So you start with the foundation here of what I did with the easy question, and you build upon it. You start learning you need to learn the techniques at a deeper level, like dynamic programming. What I've seen a lot of these companies do, they love to use matrices on these hard problems. So you need to learn like depth first search and breadth first search, and need to learn these algorithms on how to traverse a matrix or a graph. And so they like to do these problems where like, there's one problem called like number of islands, where you basically, what do you find? Yeah, you have a grid, and you need to find a grid of zeros and ones, and everything. You need to find every one that's surrounded by all zeros, and it's basically islands on a map. And your algorithm needs to search through this matrix to figure out how many islands there are in this map. And so they like to do problems like that. And I remember Airbnb asked this question where you went through this grid, and you were like a video game. You had to go get keys, and then you had to go take a key and take it to unlock a door. That crap was crazy, but I had done that problem before. on LeetCode. It still was hard as crap to do it in the interview because you had to do it in like 40 minutes, which is still pretty hard. That's a long problem. Like this one would be like a quarter of the code you would have to write for that one. So anyway, man, am I missing any questions? Yes, somebody said, yeah, and graphs too on Instagram. Yep, I agree with what you said about patterns. As you learn, recognizing pattern is another hack. Yeah, Cracking the Coding Interview is a book. That's a great book for learning patterns. I'm not a fan of let's say that. I'm a fan of using books. I think people should use them. I don't personally use books. I like to just do digital stuff so I can copy it to my notes. Because one thing I think I'm going to release on my social channels is my, the way that I, when I was interviewing heavy, when I was just in that interview grind, like the stuff I was doing. Like I would do problems and I would put it in this note thing in my notes. And right before the interview, I would do this flash memory exercise where I would go and look at all the LeetCode problems for that company and almost imprint them in my head. Like I'm a visual learner, except for I don't really do videos. I just like to I can almost see the code in my head. I don't know if that makes sense. Like this code here, before I did this problem tonight, I thought about it and I could see this code in my brain. It's weird. And so I do this flashcard thing 10 minutes before the interview where I just look at all the LeetCode problems that I think they're going to ask and I just imprint them. And I don't know why I went on that tangent, but I think I'm going to release that the resources I use. But anyway. So only do easies and mediums. Wait, who said that? Did I say that? I didn't say that. Well, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, you should start with easies for sure. Like if you just learn how to do LeetCode or data structures and algorithms problems, you should definitely start with easies and I wouldn't say do all the easies possible before starting on a medium. I'd say you should do probably 50 easies maybe before trying to I don't know, at least do 30 easies before trying to jump to a medium. I mean, it really ain't about the level. It's about learning the patterns. So if you let's say you get really good at breadth first search. So you can do all the easies for that and then move to a medium. You don't have to wait. That's the problem. I think with a lot of us, and I did the same thing when you start learning, you try to do all these easies and then try to go to mediums. It's really, you need to learn the patterns, not just do a bunch of problems. I really haven't done that many problems in my LeetCode. I think I've only done 40 easies. It's crazy. And I can't, because I heard people doing 300, 400 problems on their LeetCode and then they pass interviews. I was able to pass interviews with only doing 40. Shoot, it don't say it here. Dang. It says somewhere on here. I don't want to mess up this screen, so I ain't gonna try to. But yeah, it's I only done 40 easies, 12 mediums. But I also did a lot of problems on Algo Monster, which is a whole separate platform. So that I guess I've done more than I'm claiming. But and that's not even a brag. It's because I learned and it's not even a brag anyway. It's because I learned the patterns. I was learning patterns. I didn't care how many problems I did. I just need to learn the patterns. So because all these problems these companies asking, it's just a deviation or whatever you call it from one of the patterns. That's all it is. They try to add a little stuff on it to kind of make it harder, but it's always a little pattern somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Thanks, Ray. My boy Ray jumped on here. I don't know if he's still on here. Left some fires for me. Appreciate that. That's my boy in real life. I was about to put his business out there for a second. I ain't about to put his business out there. That's my boy. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I don't even know where I was at. Have done over 150 problems and got a job at Arkansas. Yeah, and I ain't even trying to crush if you did a lot of problems. Doing a lot of problems is great. You should do as many as you can. Yeah, you should do as many as you can because it's gonna make you better. And I probably should have did more. But I just got to the point where I was I need to start interviewing, man, and see what it feels like. Because it's one thing practicing, but when you get in that interview and get that interview energy up in you, it's a different beast, man. So I had to get in there. And then I got in there, and what I did is I started, I would go on blind.com, glassdoor.com, leetcode.com, and I would try to find the exact problems they was going to ask me. And that really helped because then I could target my learning. Okay, I'm going to get really good at graphs because I know Airbnb, they ask like 2 or 3 graph problems every interview. And so in Amazon, I'm going to learn, they do UI components. I think I was going for a front end job there. They do UI components. So I had to learn how to build view components from scratch. And I had to learn how to build components from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I couldn't use a framework. So I had to learn how to do both. I remember one question was like build a DOM tree or build a file tree. Like in like old Windows, you open a file and then it branches out as little folders and it branches out as files. They made me like build one of those in JavaScript and HTML and CSS from scratch. So different interviews ask for different stuff, but they all, all those big companies, they eventually ask LeetCode unless they've decided not to. And so the new wave is that some companies are saying like, okay, we don't believe in LeetCode. Stripe was one example of company I interviewed for. They don't do LeetCode. They do all like practical problems. Now, their interview was hard still, but I liked it because it wasn't doing these LeetCode problems that don't apply to the real job. They really don't. Like there's some jobs you can get maybe in ML and maybe in AI that maybe do some algorithm stuff, but they're not about to be doing those simple algorithms talking about pivot index. You know what I mean? Like they're doing. So you do need to, but you need to learn the core of like big O notation and time complexity and space complexity and how to write performant algorithms. You do need to learn that. And so these problems do help you think about that and learn it. And that's what they're testing for. But I think over the years it's gotten obsessive and they focus so much on doing these problems versus what the core of the thing they were trying to do was. But anyway, man, I'm talking a long time. I'm probably gonna lose my voice. I'm gonna get on stand up in the morning, and I'm like, Kelvin, why you sound like Cuba Gooding Jr.? Your voice all raspy because you was on the internet talking all night, trying to answer questions. What about coding for fun? If you follow my stuff, I code. I code for my job every day, of course, but I code for fun all the time. Like I got all kind of stuff, side projects I work on. I do freelancing a little bit on the side. So if you look at my last post, I post about apps and stuff I be working on all the time. So yeah, I do that all the time. CSS was tough. Everybody have a problem with CSS. I like CSS, but I was just talking to my boy at the conference last week. It's called Render ATL. If you ever want to come to a conference and meet me, I'm gonna be at Render ATL for eternity at this point. It's my first time I went last week. But anyway, he was talking about he hated CSS too. And I was like, dang, I like CSS. But I can see where CSS, it can get a little stringy sometimes, get a little crazy. So I get it. How much do you make? I mean, shoot, I don't know if I want to put all that out there. I ain't got to the I know all these people on this transparency boat now, but I'm like, bruh, I ain't trying to you asking that somebody else, I ain't trying to put that out there for my coworkers to come see what. I don't know if a coworker up on here, but I will say, I mean, easily over 100,000, well over 100,000. I'll say that I was making 100,000 a long time ago, so it's way more than that now. So 6 figures, I guess. I just say 6 figures. That's a good. Because 6 figures goes from 100,000 all the way to 1 million or 999,000. So I make somewhere up in between there, and then get like my company. Luckily, is a public company, so they give us stock. So shoot, my junk could be like way up one year, junk could be like way low one year. It just depends. Like sometimes I'll make like way more money than I've ever made in my life one year, and then the next year the stock will go down because of Ukraine war or something. I probably shouldn't even say that on here. They probably gonna flag my video or something, man. They do weird crap on here on all these channels. You say one weird thing and they like take your video down or something. So, but anyway, yeah. So I mean, hey, it's worth it to get into tech, man. In general, you can make a lot of money, man. I still want more money, but I'm blessed to get what I have gotten. So I'm happy about that. How many years you in here? I've been in 10 years, man. A long time. So it was even, the game has changed, man. When I got into it, it wasn't even pretty to get into tech, man. People wasn't even, they was like, programming, what are you doing? And I've seen it grow until now it's like popular. Like it's getting into tech or be a programmer or be whatever you're doing in tech is like super popular now. And so I've seen it grow. And yeah, I mean, I seen the money grow too, man. I had to like that's one of the reasons I had to get back out on my interview game, because I was like, shoot, I gotta get my junk, keep my junk on par. You know what I'm saying? Like, I gotta test the market. So that's one thing. I mean, I could talk about that in another video, how like get your money right, especially if you're older in the game, and then how to keep, stay up with inflation, man. Like, I mean, it's crazy. These companies, man, they firing people left and right. They ain't, keeping up with stuff. It's just, I mean, they ain't they're not keeping you at the company like they used to. Like my dad's generation, they stay at company for like 30 years. Shoot. Dang, man, why somebody calling somebody brokey up in here, man? Dang. You calling me brokey? Dang. Or you calling somebody else, bro? I don't know. Somebody brokey. You ain't got to do them like that, man. Dang. We all good here. Everybody good. But yeah, if you're trying to, I mean, you don't have to get into it for love or take. If you're just trying to make more money, I'm telling you, the tech industry is where it's at, man. It's where it's at. A lot of the jobs are work from home. It's not hard on your back. You can do it till you old. It's interesting to me. And yeah, it's future. I mean, it's future proof. We got this AI thing that's out here, but that AI thing tackling all white collar jobs. I know a lot of people trying to come in, programmers and tech people. Oh, you're gonna take your AI gonna take your job. No, they gonna take your job. Like if you ain't it, I mean, at least I could move to it. If I could move to doing AI before they finally cut us out, I can move to AI and work on the AI itself. Worst case. But if you somewhere doing like data entry or doing like customer service or something, no disrespect, but it's like I got a lot of people coming at me talking about gonna take your job. I mean, AI gonna take your job, I'm like, man, by the time AI take my job, it's gonna be done took so many other jobs that programmers gonna be least of the worries. If it takes all the programmers' jobs, do you know how many jobs it would have already taken before that? Like, we won't be worried about programmers taking our job. Ain't gonna be no news line. AI taking programmers' jobs not gonna be a news line. We're gonna be in such a crisis that we're not gonna be thinking about no programmers. So don't let AI prevent you from getting in tech. I just had to say this on Twitter the other day, like, bruh, like people getting scared. People talking about they gonna change their career. I'm not getting into tech no more. I'm gonna drop out my boot camp. It's over. Come on, man. Don't let AI take your dreams, man. We let real people take our dreams all the time. Don't let the AI take our dreams too. Like, damn, come on, y'all. Like, get in. You at least got like. Get in and make some money for 5 years, tops. If you want to just jump in and make some money for 5 years, do that. You know what I mean? And take your job in 5 years, then at least you came in and made you a couple $100,000. You got some stock options. Do something, man. Like, then you can pivot to something else. Shoot. So anyway, man, I'm just talking now. Appreciate y'all joining. Man, it's a lot going on. There's a lot of questions. I think I'm gonna do another Q&A because this was supposed to be just a quick, easy leak code, but it always turns into Q&A. I love it. So anyway, appreciate y'all talking with each other. Y'all connect with each other too in the channel. Like, I see some good conversation going on. I see some funny conversation going on TikTok. See all my people on Instagram that are joining. Wave, appreciate that. People on my boy Strength on YouTube, appreciate your comments. Any tips on learning Python? Basically the same tips as learning anything else, man. Figure out the way you learn. What's the form you learn in? Is it school? Is it self-learning boot camps? Or is it a degree? Figure out which the best way you learn and choose that way to learn it. It's learning with different programming languages. You'll learn as you go along that the skills translate, and it's all about building that foundation of learning how to code, and then you can pivot to different languages pretty easily. Like, that's why I haven't really used Python, but I have no fear. And if my job asks me tomorrow to go learn Python and build something, I have something done by the end of the week in Python for sure. So, I mean, and I wouldn't even have to use ChatGPT, but I probably would use it, like at work, but I wouldn't have to. So, because I've had to jump into new languages all the time. So, and that ain't being trying to be like, I've done this for 10 years. I understand that it ain't about the tools. It's about the tool man or the person. And it's about translatable skills, being able to translate to different, because when I first started, there wasn't, I wasn't using frameworks and all that stuff. Now every day I use Vue and React and stuff. So I've always had to learn new stuff. It ain't, Ain't nothing new. So anyway, I think I'm gonna jump over here. I'm gonna do a Q&A probably this week sometime, and I'm gonna definitely do another leak code problem eventually. I appreciate all y'all joining, especially on TikTok, man. Please drop a follow if you want to keep up with me when I do these things, when I do any lives. My content, post funny stuff, post educational stuff. Just trying to help people. I don't ask for nothing, but just support when you can, or DM me, talk with me. I love talking with people, stuff like that. Yeah, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitch. I'm on all the platforms, so find me. Somebody said, "Are you affirmative action hire, man?" I ain't never seen affirmative action in like 10 years. I've never even seen it at play. Like I've been a manager. I've hired people. They ain't never told me to hire nobody for no affirmative action, man. If anything, I've worked with like a handful of like black people, you know what I'm saying, or minorities or whatever. I guess I work with more minorities, but like as far as black people, not a lot. So that's an interesting comment. But hey, man, I know it comes with the territory, so I'm cool with it because securing it, man. We do what we do over here, so we all success over here. So, but anyway, yeah, appreciate y'all. Got off track. Appreciate y'all. Like, follow, subscribe, all that, good stuff. And I hope to see y'all again. Please make connections. Please DM me if I didn't get to your question. I'm friendly. Give me time to get to them. And please come join the next one when I get on here. So hopefully subscribe or do whatever so you can see the next one. Don't want nothing from you. You ain't got nothing to buy. I'm just sharing this stuff. Y'all helping me because I'm practicing these things. I'm trying to keep up with these things over the course of the year. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to constantly keep up with leak code and keep myself sharp. So I get a lot from y'all in these comments. I get a lot from y'all on social, from DMs. So please keep it coming. Appreciate y'all. And I think I'm finally going to sign out. Appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good night and see y'all in the next live video or content or whatever, or in the DMs, wherever. See y'all soon.